that is, Google it. And I remember eventually moving into, all right. And I remember moving into digital projectors. So I've been here quite a bit. So I'm Gen X, so I always joke, I bridge the analog to the digital age. Right? So I thought, I've been here quite a bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight about looking back at WSN, where we've been and kind of where we're going. And like I just try to guess what the road ahead might look like for us. So change is a natural part of life. Whether you want it to happen or not, it's going to happen. Time is mean. It does happen. So just like the leaf here, that's going to turn brown at some point. You also have this very young graduate student, 24 years old, getting ready to go diving in the water, who eventually turned into this sort of associate dean professor who now flies drones because it doesn't make his back hurt as much diving. So change is, again, it's just a natural part of life. And that's really what I want to talk about today. It's kind of going back and taking a look back at WSN, where we've been, but how we've changed over the years and how we might be changing in the future. So let's go way, way, way back and look at WSN. And so this is from the history of WSN that was published in Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History by Mike Foster back in 1999, with a simple mission statement for society that's highlighted in there. That the object of the society shall be the stimulation of general interest in the fields of biological science. The society shall be broad enough in scope and liberal enough in its organization to meet the needs of all naturalists. And see, these are some of the original founders. You can see that was quite a bit back in the early 1900s. I don't think people were starched colors like that anymore, but you can see we're a pretty old society, so we have a pretty long history. Now, when you come here today, you probably noticed you had a lot of sessions about kelp forest ecology, rocky intertidal, coral reef, and a lot of marine talk. It might surprise a lot of you know that WSN was not always such a marine science-focused society. This is the graph that's in that same publication that Mike Foster put together. And if you take a look back at the history, there was a point in time where terrestrial ecology was actually the majority of the types of talks that you saw here. A lot of plant ecology talks were big there. It was about in the 1960s or so we started to see the shift to where we're at today, right? That we actually have this kind of really heavy marine science-focused society. So change is not a new thing for the society. We've seen it happen in the past, and it's likely going to happen again. Right? Even people like who we think about as your classic marine ecologists are themselves terrestrial ecologists. And so I want to thank Paul Dayton for sending these to me at the last minute. How many of you know Paul is a kelp forest ecologist, or his Antarctic work? Yeah, put your hand up, everyone know that. How many of you know that he has a desert ecology program focused on climate change impacts on cactus? Okay, not a whole lot of people. I know a few people out there too. Yeah, in fact, the first time I learned that was in 1998 at the WSN meeting in San Diego. It was wild to watch it. It was a whole sort of symposium on the ecology of La Paz. And that's actually Paul there with some students and colleagues down in Baja. In fact, what he has been looking at over a number of years now, it's the impact of climate change on the cactus cholla there. And you can see going back to 1987, he's got this wonderful time series of photographs where he goes into the present day here in 2018, where he's been able to track the change of climate change on a terrestrial environment. So again, it's just kind of giving you a sense that, yeah, we actually used to do things a little bit differently in the past. We weren't always so marine focused, but that our members here are constantly sort of weaving into different types of topics. People just don't stay steady, right, in one area of interest. But we also have a history, right, that's filled with really notable naturalists that have been part of society going way back to its founding. Over there, some of you might know that person is Isabella Abbott. She was actually the first native Hawaiian to get tenure at Stanford, longtime member at Hopkins Marine Station, very well-known psychologist, did a lot of work on the biodiversity of algae. It's also former president of WSN. Bob Kane, many people are very familiar with him as well, longtime member of WSN, lots of work on the keystone species concept. It's actually one of the first Lifetime Achievement Award winners, WSN. Right, we've had folks like Joe Connell, right, come to the society again. I was fortunate to meet him a couple of times. I went to school at Santa Barbara, he was retired. He would still come in every once in a while, so I'm really fortunate to get to meet him back then. A lot of us know him about demonstrating the presence of competition in nature. There together, and he was literally the first Lifetime Achievement Award winner for WSN. So we have a pretty long history of people who made really substantial contributions, right, in the field of natural history and ecology. And so WSN, right, over the years, it's really provided a forum for us to help us better understand, right, the natural world. We get together like this, once a year, right around this time every year, we get to share ideas, learn really new, cool concepts. Like I said, I never would have guessed Paul worked on cactus, even though I went to that talk way back when. But this has been a great forum for us all to come together, learn new ideas, collaborate, form sort of great research projects with each other, right? And so it's provided that for us. It's also provided us with community, right? I talked about it a little bit earlier as well. This is also where we come to see friends that we don't get to see all that often. That's me with my lab. My very last time as a faculty member at Cal State Monterey Bay before I moved to Washington was my very last group of graduate students and undergraduates. Right, so that was our community. But they got to come here, they made friends. I see them pop in every now and then. I see some of my former students scattered throughout here as well. So it's a place you get to go, get to see your friends get a little older, a little grayer, temples, all of that under there. But it's also a place where you can just come and be yourself, right, with your friends. Right, and so it's also a place that's provided us community, right, over these years. Now, all that said, we are a STEM society, and we're not immune, right, to the other things that happen in STEM. Right, so this is a paper that came out 5 or so years ago there, called No Progress in Diversity, right, in 40 years. Right, and it was really dealing with the issue of the geosciences and the lack of effectiveness of student programs that were focused on trying to increase diversity in geosciences. And just to sort of define that for you, if you're not familiar with it, those are the atmospheric, ocean, polar, and earth sciences. And in short, what they found in here, let's see if this works. Maybe not. It's here. If you look over here, right, these are all the different ethnic groups, right, that were getting PhDs and what they consider the geosciences. The black line are considered white, non-Hispanic. The other lines down there are groups that were considered minority groups. So to actually see that, you actually have to zoom way in, right, to see the trends. If you look over here, the green line are Native Americans. The brown line there are African or black, non-Hispanic groups. The blue line are Hispanic or Latino. So you can see there just wasn't a lot of progress for there. And just to put like a face to the data, you might see there's a little red circle there, like 5 Hispanics that got their PhD in 2001. I'm one of those 5. But it also gives you a sense, though, of what diversity looked like right back then. Right, when I look around the room today, there's a lot more people here, right? It looks a lot different than it was. But, that lack of diversity in our past did come with a cost, right? This is another paper that came out back in 2020 by Hofstra and their colleagues. This is a group of STEM educators at Stanford, and they wrote a paper called The Diversity Innovation Paradox. Right? And what this paper really focused on is they actually went back through 40 years of PhD thesis projects in STEM fields, and what they came up with here is they were able to sort of quantify an innovation index, right, as part of it. So that green and the orangish line up there, those are sort of white non-Hispanic groups, they're kind of innovation and where they wind up in their career. The blue line, right, in that case, those are your minority groups, right, where they wind up in terms of innovation. Well, what you see right here, that race-specific novelty to research faculty, gender-specific novelty, research faculty. But if you look at the research-specific novelty, what you see is the folks there on the blue line were tended to innovate at a really higher rate, but they weren't being rewarded, right, with research jobs. Folks who actually came out, right, who were considered white non-Hispanic, they weren't innovating at a higher rate, but they were getting sort of rewarded more often. Right, the takeaway message from all of that is that the long-term outcome is that you lost all these minority groups from the sciences and the research workforce, but you also had this delay, right, in innovating STEM fields, right? So we lost a lot, right, back then. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but good news is we're getting more diverse. So I want to thank the DI committee for providing this data for my talk today. So this is based on about 160 responses to our survey from last year. I think we had about 500, 600 or so attendees at the conference there. But one of the things you're seeing is Hispanic groups are growing, right, in the society. We're starting to see more Asian Americans come into society. We're getting uptake in African Americans in the society. In fact, I think I saw a few black and green science shirts around the conference today. I think I've mentioned a number of people from Hampton here. I hadn't seen that in the past. So we're becoming more diverse in terms of who's coming here, right, to our conference. Women are the majority. They are. If you look at that data on there, about 68% of our membership, or the attendee people who surveyed last year, were women. About 25%, 26 are men, right? Needless to say, we actually need to see that translated to leadership levels. Right. The other thing I want to highlight here is our colleagues and friends who identify as non-binary, gender fluid, or gender queer. They're coming out here. They're identified. So the community that we have today, right, is very different than the community that we had many years ago. And trust me, I get to see this quite a bit. Many of you know I run a drill program, right? And we used to run at Cal State Monterey Bay. Now I run at the University of Washington. My very first drill pilots were all women. I have not had a guy apply to my lab in almost 6 years over there, right? And so I affectionately refer to them as Rogue Squadron. Many of you know I'm a big Star Wars fan. But the person there in the middle is Taylor. She was literally the very first drone pilot to join my group on there, right? And so I get to see, right, women sort of leading, right, STEM into areas that we hadn't been to before, and actually leading in a lot of the talks and types of disciplines that we see represented here, right, in WSN. And let's hear from the students. This was definitely not the trend when I first came to WSN. I was pretty heavy faculty, grad student, postdoc. If you look at that, you look at all the student groups, it's about 62% of our attendees are now students, with the majority of the students being undergraduates. Can we hear it for the undergraduates? So we are changing, right? We are changing with the times. What does this all mean for WSN? Right? So change is one of those things that makes us really anxious, makes us nervous. It's unknown. We don't know where it's going to go. What does that mean for me? What does this actually mean for WSN? Well, I'm going to give a few thoughts here what this means for WSN. Our research topics are going to evolve. It's just a natural outcome. The people who are attending this conference, they're getting younger, they're getting more diverse. They probably have different interests than we saw in the past. There's no better example of that than we saw in the DI symposium, right, this week. Collaborating across cultures. Again, that is not a talk I would have seen back in 1996, 1997 when I first came here. These are things that are of interest now, right, to the individuals who are now attending this conference. People want to work across groups that they haven't historically worked with. They want their science to have a societal impact, right, these days. Right, so our science is changing, and that's a good thing, right, because when you do that, it opens up your discovery space. It opens up the impact that your science has. It brings new people here, brings new ideas, right? It brings new perspective, right, to WSN. And so that is a good thing. We'll have to learn to use new tools. Right? Again, that is part of the change. You know, if those of you who went to our presidential symposium this morning, these are tools that were really not around yet when I was in graduate school. You know, I came out of the era of quadrats and meter tapes. I was a postdoc in the lab in the early 2000s where we bought, and I know students here find this funny, a 5-megapixel digital camera that cost almost $2,000 because that was the top of the line, state-of-the-art technology, right, at the time. There, I think my phone that I have in my pocket has like way more megapixels in that. But examining new questions requires that we have to adopt new approaches, how we get data, who we connect with. We saw great examples of that with Kakani. Right? She talked not just about the science that she was doing, but how she was using it to try and engage a new generation, right, of scientists by engaging them in platforms that they're used to being in. You know, smartphones, video games. Josh talked about the way that he's using technology, right, to conserve endangered species here, but also in service of trying to create renewable energy. As well, he's talking about a new way that we're thinking about his science. Mycera talked about looking at our ecosystems from space. Again, that was something we weren't doing, 40 or so years ago. And so to really get to some of the more tricky, thorny problems that we deal with in WSN, not only do we have to ask new questions, right, engage new audiences, we also have to engage new approaches, right, for getting that data. change, mentoring is always going to be a constant, right, in this society. It's as true today as it was when the society was first founded. And I'm really happy, right, of that. I'm sort of the outcome, right, or the result of a long line of people who stood behind me, right, and helped me get to where I'm at today. Right? I benefited, right, in my early years working with Carlos Robles, both as an undergraduate and later on as his postdoctoral scientist. I also went to graduate school working with Sally Goldberg and Rush Schmidt. So, they had a reputation of being really tough, but they really were great mentors, right? They really understand where I was coming from. They understood where my gaps were, right? They always set a high bar for me, right? They always believed in me. And so that group of people, right, they're people I rely on to this day. Right, and it was funny, I took this picture back in July out of Anfield. Carlos happened to be there, I was going in, and Emily Carrington was there. She was pointing out something I didn't really notice in the picture. I thought it was just a cool photo of like Carlos and I from the air. She was pointing out I'm actually the one doing the teaching now, right, in that picture. Right, because I'm pointing out to him because I'm actually showing him how the drone's getting data in an ecosystem that he's worked on for the better part of his career over there. And so one of the things you'll start to notice as you start to advance in your career is that mentoring comes full circle, right? I think I don't want to be quite the Darth Vader thing. We all remember the statements that I was once a student and I'm a master. I didn't quite do that in there. But these things start to happen. These things are cycling. So mentoring cuts both ways and it goes on for the entirety, right, of your career. All right, so what does lie down the road ahead? I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I really don't know what lies down the road ahead. And in some ways, that makes it scary, but it's also what makes it exciting. Right there. It was back in 1995, a lot of people know I grew up in East LA. I left that driveway for Santa Barbara. I had no idea what I was getting into. Right? No one in my family had ever left that 5-block radius. And so I literally got on the open road to who knows what at that point. I didn't find myself here today. But all you would have to say is, especially for your students, you make your own future. Right? No one determines your future for you but you. I have a good friend of mine who's really fond of saying, where you come from doesn't dictate where you go. There. Right? And so what I was going to tell you is, be brave. Have a little courage. Have a little trust. Be a little adventurous. Take a chance every once in a while. Don't silo yourself off in different ways of looking at things. Go do that awesome internship. Go do that other internship that seems like unusual, but maybe it'll lead somewhere. In my own career, it was actually sort of started with a fellowship that I almost didn't apply for. I almost didn't show up because I thought it was a waste of time. I remember my mom saying, go do it, I'm paying for my whole undergraduate career. It's actually how I met Carlos, and then that launched me to where I'm at today. Right, so those little sort of opportunities that you might not take, that might be the thing that helps to push you down the road. Now, my fellow mentors out there, especially my fellow Gen Xers, I am a Gen Xer, I know we have a saying that we talk about, we refer to certain folks named to a certain stage as a society elders. And I hate to break it to all y'all, but we're becoming the society elders at this point. It's really up to us, right, to help that next generation navigate that road down ahead, right? Because without a mentor, right, you really are putting someone into an unusual situation, right? And that little guy we can, that little sort of word of encouragement, that can help us go make that change for them. So with that, let's say thank you, WSN. Thank you for listening. Go out there, make your own future, and enjoy the rest of the meeting.